only two things in the world I'm scared of.
I'm scared of two things? What's that?
Women and the police.
Women and the police.
You spend all your time trying to hump them both, don't you?
Yeah.
Burt Reynolds usually calls to mind swagger, fast cars, sharp one-liners, and the kind of movie star charm that made him one of the biggest names of the 1970s. Dinah Shore brings up a different kind of fame, one built on warmth, grace, music, television, and a presence that made viewers feel like they knew her personally. Put them together, and the story sounds almost too unlikely to be real. A glamorous, younger leading man and a beloved older television icon falling deeply in love, then spending decades linked by a relationship that never fully went away. And because stories like this always bring out strong opinions, drop a comment and tell us whether you think timing or fear is what really kept them apart. Behind the old headlines and age gap jokes was something much more personal, and that's exactly why Burt Reynolds spent 25 years visiting her grave. First meeting.
I'm gonna come to you.
When Burt Reynolds first appeared on Dinah Shore's talk show around 1970, he was on the rise, but not yet the full-blown box office giant he would soon become. Dinah, on the other hand, was already a major star, with decades of success behind her as a singer, television host, and daytime favorite. She had polish, confidence, and the kind of ease that only comes from surviving the business for years. Burt was taken with her right away. He later recalled asking her, almost out of nowhere, to join him in Palm Springs for the weekend. She turned him down at first, which only made the whole thing feel more fated when they later connected in Chicago and the relationship truly began. On paper, the romance looked unusual. She was nearly 20 years older, twice divorced, and already a mother. He was younger, restless, newly divorced from Judy Carn, and still moving toward the biggest years of his fame. But both of them brushed aside the numbers because the chemistry was obvious. Dinah had her own way of explaining it. A relationship, in her view, was not about chronology. It was about attraction, timing, and the simple fact that some people just click. That was the spark that started everything. Early love.
I was going to talk about the value of massage in relieving tensions. When your husband comes
Now see,
home at night
there's a
from
certain
the
point.
office,
There's a certain point in the hand, right?
when
there. And that's right in the palm.
I'm in love.
What made the relationship work at first was how ordinary it felt in private. For two celebrities who attracted attention everywhere they went, Burt and Dinah built something surprisingly calm. They spent time at home, played tennis and golf, and enjoyed a rhythm that sounded far less like tabloid drama and far more like genuine companionship. Burt loved to talk about the small things. One of his favorite memories was that Dinah was the better tennis player, yet she would sometimes let him win. He knew exactly what she was doing, and instead of feeling embarrassed, he found it touching. It told him she cared enough to make him feel good in ways both playful and subtle. They also had real common ground. Both were Southerners. Both understood fame from the inside. Dinah had already lived through the kind of career pressure Burt was only beginning to experience, so she became not just a partner, but a guide. He later said she gave him advice constantly, and in the end, she was always right. That dynamic mattered. Burt was entering a bigger and wilder chapter of stardom, and Dinah offered steadiness without trying to control him. She was elegant without being cold, wise without lecturing, and affectionate without turning the relationship into a public performance. The Snag. For all their closeness, one issue never really went away. Burt wanted marriage and children. Dinah, having already raised 2 children and lived through a long marriage to George Montgomery, did not want to start that life over again. That difference sat quietly in the background until it became impossible to ignore. Burt later admitted that he wanted to marry her and could not understand why love was not enough. He believed they could have adopted if having children naturally was not possible. From his point of view, the obstacle was painful because it felt solvable. From Dinah's point of view, it was probably deeper than that. She reportedly told a friend she did not want to grow old in his arms. That line says a lot. It suggests that Dinah was not simply avoiding marriage. She may have been protecting him, or perhaps protecting herself from the sorrow of becoming older beside a man who was still moving into a younger season of life. By the mid-1970s, the pressure had built to a breaking point. Burt is said to have told friends he had reached a crossroads. Either they would marry, or he would have to move on. For a couple so deeply attached, that choice was brutal. After the break.
There was one lady who always taught me the meaning of class, and a little bit of it rubbed off.
You gotta give a little, take a little, and let your poor heart break a little. That's the story of, that's the glory of love.
Their breakup hurt because it was not built on betrayal. There was no big scandal at the center of it. That almost made it worse. It was two people in love who could not force their futures into the same shape. Burt reportedly told Dinah during a tearful confrontation that he would love her all his life, then walked away. He later said the split was one of the hardest things he had ever done. He missed not just the romance, but the friendship, the closeness, and the comfort of having her in his world. He claimed that after they parted, he often wanted to pick up the phone and call her. What makes this story different from so many Hollywood romances is they did remain close. They did not become strangers. They stayed important to each other. That matters because it helps explain why Dinah's death hit Burt so hard years later. Burt went on to other famous relationships, including Sally Field and later Lonnie Anderson, with whom he adopted his son Quentin. But even with all that came later, he repeatedly spoke of Dinah in a different tone. She was not just one great love among many, she was the one he regretted losing. Why the visits never stopped.
Few stars have worn their fame with such grace and good humor. Few stars have endured for so long. Dinah Shore died today at 76 after singing her way into the hearts of generations of television audiences.
Dinah Shore died of cancer in February 1994 at age 77. Burt's public words afterwards were unusually tender, even for a man known for charm. He said Hollywood had lost its greatest and only real angel, and that she was what God meant when he tried to make perfection. Those are not casual compliments, they sound like grief speaking plainly. In the years that followed, Burt reportedly made an annual trip in February to Forest Lawn in the Palm Springs area, bringing flowers to her grave. He kept doing it from the mid-1990s until his own death in 2018. That's where the larger answer begins to emerge. He was not visiting out of guilt alone. He was honoring a bond that never really disappeared. Later in life, Burt called ending the relationship his biggest regret. He said parting with Dinah was stupid, that they were soulmates, and that he was lucky to have had someone like her in his life. For a man who spent decades being treated like a screen tough guy, those words are very vulnerable. So why did he keep going back? Because Dinah represented the road he never stopped thinking about. She was the woman who knew him before the peak, advised him during the rise, loved him without trying to possess him, and stayed in his heart long after the romance ended. That is why Burt Reynolds visited her grave for 25 years. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Burt and Dinah were truly soulmates who met at the wrong time? Or do you think Dinah knew from the start that love alone would never be enough to make their relationship last? Let us know in the comments section below.